Today we're going to talk about 5 myths about the healing journey. I see these come up commonly in my patients and also within myself, and it's a very disempowering place to be in this really amazingly transformative process in your life. So we're going to cover the myths today and also some truths behind the myths that will help you start moving forward in your own healing journey. Okay, so let's jump right into these myths today. So myth number 1. My body is incapable or broken and it's not able to heal. This is a super common one. I'd say that most of my patients come in believing this about themselves. I've believed this about myself quite a bit, especially before I got into the natural world of medicine. So yeah, it's ever present because our system of medicine here in the West encourages us to think this way. It encourages us to look at our body as almost like a car, very mechanistic, right? So it expects us to kind of just keep driving along and keep trucking and go and never stop and keep pushing. And then if something breaks down, you take that part out and you replace it with a new one. This is really common in kind of the idea with joints, I think. That's the best metaphor, where people are like, oh, if my knee wears out, I'll just get a knee replacement or I'll get a hip replacement. And these are massive procedures. This is not something that you should kind of take with a grain of salt, like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Having an entire joint replaced is huge, among with many other kind of these ideas of this mechanistic kind of replacement. Of course, there are a few conditions where this is really relevant, right? Sometimes we need a pacemaker in our heart. We do actually need help there. Some other things come up where we do need to replace or repair something. But oftentimes that only happens once we've gotten to this very end state of disease. Once we've tried to compensate, and then our body just can't quite hold on anymore, and things really fall apart for us at that point. Which is exactly kind of what we're used to doing and how we're used to thinking about the body. In Western medicine, it's very much so just kind of let things go, and we don't know what to do with you until you get to this point where something is broken down, and then we have an intervention for you, unfortunately. So we're all trained to think that we are not capable of healing, right? Because we've got this broken part. Who do we take that to? We take it to the doctor. We don't go in and fix anything before that point, and then we take it to them, and we give all of our power over to them. It's an extremely disempowering way to look at ourselves and our bodies, because we're essentially giving somebody else the control, right? You take control of my healing. I don't know what to do with this, right? And that's kind of at the core belief of my body is incapable of healing. Is that we don't have any idea what to do. The body is stupid. It has no idea what it's doing. Why did it break down? A common one that I hear is, man, I've been doing this for 20 years. Why is it a problem now? And the answer is, it's always been a problem. It's just that your body has been able to compensate for it over the years for that amount of time. And then it hits a certain point where it's tilt, right? It just can't hold on to that anymore for you. And then you really see systems start to break down at that point. So it's unfortunate that our system is weighted this way. It's very different in Eastern medicine. They don't look at the body as this kind of mechanistic and then also reductionistic mechanism, essentially. So reductionism means looking at each separate part and not actually putting it together in a congruent whole, right? And we see this a lot in Western medicine, where we've got the gastroenterologist and we've got the rheumatologist and we've got all of our other specialists, and we're really lucky if any of them ever talk. And if you've got a GI symptom, it's only related to the GI. If you've got a joint symptom, you go to the rheumatologist or the orthopedist. There's not this idea that the body is this interconnected whole. And unfortunately, that reductionistic mindset really is harmful, because we start to believe in this mechanistic kind of view of the body, and we're not valuing the whole of ourselves as a living, breathing organism, that we are greater than the sum of our parts. So let's dive into truth number 1. So your body is always working in your best interest and is always healing. So that might kind of rub some of you the wrong way. Sometimes you're kind of like, what? Are you sure? Why does it make me uncomfortable? Why do I get allergies? Or, why did my knee break down and I needed a replacement? That type of thing. It's hard to believe sometimes if you're really focused on your symptoms, and you're looking at the body as illogical and stupid, and I shouldn't be in this pain and I shouldn't be having this problem, when really all of your symptoms are your body communicating with you, right? It's telling you something's wrong. We just really, really don't like to listen. And we don't like to listen so much so that we let things get to this incredibly decompensated state where we do actually have to go to this broken down kind of repair model of Western medicine. That's our culture. That's how we've learned to think about the body. So this is kind of challenging a very deep belief that we tend to have about our body. This is a core principle of naturopathic medicine. I love it. That's why I get so excited about teaching it and telling people about it, because when you start looking at it and you start realizing that your body actually does this, it opens an entirely new world. It's transformative because you start to see and put things together about yourself and your life, and you see how it's added up to where you are at this point. It's a really long process. It's tough. I don't mean to sugarcoat it, but it is absolutely worth your time to do it. So with your body is always working in your best interest, even if it's making you uncomfortable, because it's making you uncomfortable for a really specific reason, right? It's telling you, hey, you need to stop, you need to slow down, we need to not do this right now. So it is really important to start asking yourself questions if you are uncomfortable or you have chronic symptoms that come up. What have I been doing? And I guess I should preface that with that as well. Generally with these healing myths, I am talking about chronic issues that people have. That's usually what we associate the healing journey with. If there's something acute, that's kind of a completely different set of rules. That's something superimposed upon the top of this kind of chronic health journey. Sometimes it lines up exactly with some of these healing steps here too, and other times it's very different. So it's important to note that most of the time I am talking about chronic symptoms, but this is definitely true in acute as well, that our body is always healing. It wants to heal. That is the principle of naturopathic medicine I was talking about. It's called the VIS, V-I-S. I'll kind of write that down below for you. That's Latin for the healing power of nature. So it's this belief that our body has an innate ability to heal. And the easiest way to see this and demonstrate it is if you have a cut on your finger, right, or wherever, and the cut heals spontaneously, seemingly, right? You're not directing it, you're not telling the immune system to go there and fight off any infection and to close up the wound, you're not telling your blood to clot, you're not telling your skin cells to repair and regenerate, it just does it. So I think it's very easy to kind of see that, okay, all right, that makes sense, and then translate that kind of purpose to the entire body. There's no reason why it wouldn't translate, and the body is always working that way and in our best interest. It wants to be happy and healthy and balanced and have you have great sleep, get exercise, get fresh air, sunlight, all of these wonderful core things about health, which are the best doctors, by the way. It wants all of that for you. It doesn't want to feel uncomfortable, which is why it tells you when it's uncomfortable, just like you would. If you were uncomfortable and you knew what was causing you to be uncomfortable, you might say something, right? It's just that our body doesn't have that same verbal communication that we so identify with as humans, right? That we use so much. So it's just another language that you're having to learn to interpret from your body. So it's always working in your best interest, and you can start to see these examples in your life if you start listening to the symptoms and then also seeing how you do heal and you do recover. And a lot of times, despite Western medicine that often suppresses things, it often suppresses our own immune response, our own healing response, and then your body still heals anyway. It's kind of amazing. So really kind of trying to put this in perspective for yourself and see where you've identified it or where you can identify it in your life in the past or currently, and see how that works for you. Just shifting that mindset, because this is a very empowered mindset, right? We are believing in ourselves here, And I think that's why this can be so tough for people to integrate sometimes, because it requires you to believe in yourself and believe that your body is doing the right thing and that you are capable of doing the right thing. And that can be a major psychological hang-up for some people. So if you're having trouble or stumbling around with this, ask yourself if there's a core belief that you hold about yourself that's maybe impeding this, because oftentimes that does come up. Okay, so let's move on to myth number 2 here. I don't have the ability to repair myself. So we kind of talked about this, right? But it's the idea that we need to hand over the control to someone else. I can't do it. My body has no idea what I'm doing, what it's doing, and I need to give this to a doctor. And unfortunately, that is kind of the way the medical model is built as well, that we've got doctor as God and patient as kind of this powerless underling that maybe the doctor dictates things to, and hopefully helps them. But yeah, that's not the end all be all. And I'm not saying all medical practitioners are like that. Certainly not. It's very individual. But that is a general trend in Western medicine, and even the lack of education that they provide for people and their patients is unfortunate. I end up doing a lot of that education for them because people just really don't understand that they do have this ability to repair, to heal themselves. So yeah, you have to take control of that and ownership of the fact that you do have the ability to repair yourself and that your body is always working that way for you. So the truth number 2 is you are your own best advocate and authority, which sometimes also hard to swallow for people. Because that's just a total 180, right, from what we're taught. Is like, no, this other person outside of me knows, either my therapist or my doctor, my Pilates instructor, whatever it is, right? That's what we're used to. We're used to kind of these medical professionals or even natural healthcare people dictate what we need to do, and this is best for you. You know, that's how we look up diet advice or nutrition advice or lifestyle or, you know, the latest study that came out. We give all the power to this new piece of science or information rather than actually integrating it into ourselves, seeing if it sits well, if it's right for us. Great, we'll use that. And if it's not, filtering it out, because everybody is individual, everybody is unique. There is no one answer for everyone. And that's why I love naturopathic medicine so much, because that's what we do, is we take into account the individual. And this is something that you can do yourself, that you are your best authority, because you are the one that lives in your body 24/7. You know, with my patients, I see them for 90 minutes, maybe once or twice a week, maybe once a month. I am not the authority on how they're feeling or what they need to do. My job is to guide them through places where they're stuck, and then eventually teach them all of these things that I'm talking to you about, right? That they can heal, that they're capable of it, that they're worth healing, that they need to listen to their body. All of these things are incredibly important to your healing journey. If you're not embracing them, you won't make progress on your healing journey. And that's a big thing that I have to talk to people about, right? I am not the one in power here. I am not the authority. It's you. And that is a lot of responsibility to put back on someone and to take on yourself. And it often takes a while for people to really shoulder that. Because when they do that, they're not only accepting that for the present, it's also for the past. Like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing to myself for these decades, right? Why have I been self-harming myself this way? Or what is my hang-up? And then they start to really get into the core of who they are. And that's the beauty of this healing journey, and why it's so much more intense and difficult than the Western medicine model, where it's really, you have this condition, let me squash the symptoms. This kind of true and deep healing is really asking you to get to the very center of your core beliefs and your being, and ask you to take a hard look at that and see if there are things that you need to shift. I do this for myself all the time. It's hard work. And I don't always get it right away. I mean, I am a professional at this, and it's still hard. But that's okay. That's the point. It's always a learning process. And as long as you're open and willing, things will come to you. You will figure it out. Just realizing that you are the one that's empowered in the situation. You are the one that gets to ask the doctor questions. You get to decide on your treatment. You get to decide what's run. It's all these things. This is all your health and your body, and you are the ultimate say in that. You just want to be educated with yourself, and then also about, what you're considering doing. Okay, so on to myth number 3. Healing is easy, smooth, and linear. This is a big one. So I drew a little chart here of what I think most people think healing is like. So we've got time down here on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis we've got improvement. So this is kind of the advent of treatment, right? You go to see a new practitioner, something like this. You take a pill, whatever treatment you're starting on right now, and then things just get better and better over time. There's no bumps, there's no hiccups. It's just this linear progression of improvement, and you feel better and you're done. And this, again, is a myth that's perpetuated by the Western medicine system. And the idea, it's super comforting to think about going to the doctor, getting a pill, and having everything solved. That is kind of the greatest, I think, myth of our time, is that is legitimate healing. And it's truthfully not. It's suppressing what your body is telling you most of the time. That it's not, in no sense of the word is it healing. It's disconnecting you from what's actually happening most of the time. And that's, you're not making any progress, and unfortunately you're actually kind of going backwards, because you're still not listening. You're buying into the myth that, again, someone else knows better than you do about your body. They hold the cure outside of you, and that this is the way the healing process should be. So one of the first things I talk to my patients about is how the healing process should actually be, which, the truth is that it is a multi-layered, non-linear thing, and it will challenge you to your core. So that sounds really difficult, and it is, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. I like to get ahead of myself in these things. I'm just so excited about it. But so healing it's not a straight line at all. There's a lot of ups and downs to the process, and I think when people get into this kind of natural healing approach, they're not used to the downs. They're used to just having their symptoms going away and feeling better. And feeling better does not in any way equate to healing if you're suppressing symptoms, right? If you're truly listening to your body, working through them, and letting them go and having them resolve because you've addressed this underlying core issue, there you go. That's the real deal, and that's what everybody wants to move to, so you can truly, on all levels, feel better. So it's more of not even just an up and down line. Sometimes there's backpedaling, 2 steps forward to 1 step back. It's all over the place, and it's all individual. And I think people get frustrated sometimes because I can't tell them how it's going to go. I'll tell them there's ups and downs, that there might be and that downs especially do not mean that you're getting worse or that things are going poorly. Sometimes your body has to increase symptoms and flare things up in order to actually make you feel better. It has to release all of this junk and gunk that's been built up and suppressed, and it has to get out. All these things that we suppress most commonly as symptoms, right? Like coughing, sneezing, if we have diarrhea, urinary tract infections, anything that's coming out of the body. Western medicine usually is designed to keep that in, right? That we don't want to feel like we have a fever. We don't want to have a cough. We don't want to have mucus. And unfortunately, all of that stuff has to come out of the body for you to actually heal and to feel better. It's a necessary process. In the naturopathic medicine world, we talk about it as discharge. Anything the body is releasing. This includes emotions like anger, fear, crying, grief, all kinds of things. And discharge is absolutely crucial to you feeling better. Once it's out, it's gone. You don't have to worry about it at all anymore. But if you suppress and keep it in because you can feel better in the short term, all that junk stays in your system and it rolls around and it continues to irritate. And oftentimes that can be the beginning of chronic issues where things start to pop up that they never used to be a problem before, because your body is kind of getting fuller and fuller and fuller with all of this stuff that it's saying, hey, I got to get this out. And then it's not allowed to get it out. So you have to realize that sometimes it really wants to get it out and it's going to let you have it, but once it's out, it's moved out, and most of the time people feel better on the other side because they don't have all of this junk built up in their system, or there's less of it. And again, that's very individual, totally depends on your own terrain and immune system, past history, all kinds of things. And that's why it's great to have a natural healthcare provider or a healthcare provider that you trust to kind of guide you through that process. The multi-layered is really interesting to this too. I think people, again, with that linear, there's one thing I'm going to address and we're going to go. And again, that's a very reductionistic kind of mindset that, I'm just going to focus right here and we're going to treat this one thing and then there we go. And that's not how it works, right? The body is completely interrelated. What you do in one area is going to affect another area. That is just how it works, because everything talks to everything. So in naturopathic medicine, we talk about it as layers of an onion with people a lot of the time. So if you think about peeling off the layers of an onion, that's a perfect analogy for healing. As you go through this process, a lot of times peeling off that layer is kind of difficult and yucky, and it might make you cry. And then you've got this nice new, clean layer, right? And okay, that's another thing we have to learn how to kind of crack open and peel off. And sometimes you're able to cut right to the core of things, but then you still got all these layers, 7, 10, right? To actually move off and get down to this much more balanced state of health. And you're going to feel better with every layer that you take off, absolutely. But there's oftentimes these parts in the journey where you don't feel as good because your body is undertaking this larger healing process. Or perhaps you've done something to flare it up. That's the other part of it, and listening to your body and understanding what your triggers are, to know what you need to avoid, right? Or edit out of your life. I think that's a big one too for people. It's not always physical. It's mental and emotional gunk too that gets built up. Toxic job, toxic relationships, difficulty communicating with a spouse. All of these things kind of weigh on us and accumulate in the body as well. And I often talk to people about the fact that most illnesses, especially chronic illnesses, do start on a mental and emotional level. So those layers are the first to be kind of insulted with this chronic stress picture or irritation or grief. And if we suppress those things or we don't deal with them, then our body starts giving us symptoms on that layer, on those levels, right? Like maybe we're angry all the time, or maybe we're depressed or anxious. And then if we don't address things there, it goes deeper, it goes into physical, and we start getting, maybe we get skin breakouts, maybe we get diarrhea, maybe we get constipation, all of these different layers. It depends on who you are as a person, which systems are the most susceptible for you. But that's kind of usually the progression of how things go. And then I wanted to focus on, that it's a process, not a destination, which I think, I'm sorry, I know it sounds very cliche, right? Healing is a journey. It's super true. Cliches are cliches for a reason, right? They come out of some nugget of truth. And I do have to say that really is the truth. And the journey is the part that it's the most difficult and the most rugged and kind of raw and real, but it's also where you learn and it's where you grow, and that helps you get to this destination. And I have to say that the destination, it's a moving target. It's never a fixed point in time. Even if you've got this goal and you want this symptom to go away, like joint pain, it might resolve, but then it will be refined over time, right? You'll resolve maybe the main joint pain, and then there's a little bit of chronic flare-up that happens once in a while. So now your goal is still about joint pain, but it's about managing it on this much smaller kind of pain scale than it was before. So it's the journey is always the most meaningful part, even though it is quite challenging to take on. It makes me think of any epic fantasy novel. We think about Lord of the Rings. The book is about the journey, right? It's about the journey to get there. And then, the destination, the end, is very short, right? We've resolved the conflict, good has triumphed over evil, all of these things. And by the way, your body is not evil in this scenario. It's all the stuff that gets accumulated that can be tough. But so again, the journey is the most important part. Okay, so myth number 4, if I ignore it, it will go away. So this is a really interesting one, because I do think this actually has a positive spin to it that I'll explain here. So if you ignore it, it will go away. There's 2 possibilities the way it goes away. So one is that it was acute, or your body or immune system was strong enough to heal it, and it does truly resolve. You have not intervened in any way except to let the body do its thing, and that is fabulous. It's wonderful. I hope that happens all the time for people. and this is often what happens when we're younger, because our systems are just more vital. We're able to fight things off or resolve things with less support, because we've had less accumulation of things in our life at that point. So that is a beautiful process. But I think that this is the fallacy that happens when people are used to that process in their youth, and then maybe they're 35, maybe they're 45, 55, and that isn't happening so much anymore. And they don't understand why things are going chronic at this point, and why it hasn't resolved. And then they start taking NyQuil or Advil or whatever on a regular basis, at all of those suppressive meds that actually keep things in and dampen what your body is telling you. So that is the other way that things can go, right? It can resolve, and you can have this healing response, and it's done. Or it can actually go into this chronic, right? If we've ignored it and ignored it and ignored it, and your body's like, all right, I am going to give you a rest here for a little bit. I'm clearly not getting through to you this way. I'm going to start doing something else. Sometimes it moves from joint to joint. Sometimes your skin rash spreads. Sometimes constipation turns to diarrhea. Whatever it is, it just will shift, because you're not listening in this way. And I think men are a little bit more guilty of this than women. And sometimes that's great, right? Because less intervention can be a good thing. That is the first tenet of the Hippocratic Oath in medical school when we're sworn in with our diplomas and our Hippocratic Oath. It is first do no harm. This is first do no harm. This is following that Hippocratic Oath. That's also one of the first principles of naturopathic medicine in treating people. First do no harm. And oftentimes, from a naturopathic perspective, that can mean do nothing, because the body is fully capable of healing itself. Again, that totally depends on individual terrain, how much support you need at that time. That's why it's great to work with your own local healthcare provider that way. Western medicine, usually with that first do no harm, it's a lower intervention, so it's something that you can get over the counter. That's still an intervention, right? Sometimes the hardest thing is to not do anything and believe that your body can move through it. And again, not always appropriate, and sometimes you need some guidance through that, but it can be a valuable thing, and it's trusting your body that it's going to take care of it. And again, this is really predicated on your ability to listen and to know what your body is actually telling you at that time, if it needs something, or if it's working through something, that type of thing. So it takes some practice to get to that point. So truth number 4, we have to listen and be aware of what's happening in our bodies and our minds, right? It's not just a physical body, it's mental and emotional as well. So this is, I think, like 90% of my job is teaching people to listen to themselves and their body, because that's really how healing happens. First, you have this awareness that happens, when you start listening, when you start cueing into those symptoms and really asking, where is that back pain coming from? Where is this gas and bloating coming from? This is how you start to get insight, right? And this is often where a lot of people get stuck, because one, it's very scary. because then you're admitting to yourself, wow, maybe I've been doing something wrong or harming myself. And then two, the interpretation can be very frustrating. It can be tough, especially if you have a flare-up. And again, we talked about that already, but that it's disheartening. And you're like, man, I'm not doing the right thing. Why is this happening? And again, it just comes back to this basic trust in your body, that it is, if you can believe that internal principle that it is always healing, that informs how you think about everything else. And there's a silver lining to everything. I love it when my patients get sick, when they get a head cold. I know that sounds weird, but I'm really excited. And they know that I get excited now. They come in and tell me, oh, I know you'd be excited. So I consider that a win in my book, for people knowing that I'd be excited, because acute illness, usually like that, will get rid of a bunch of junk that's accumulated, and it's giving your body the ability to heal itself. It's like accelerated spring cleaning. A lot of the time it gets rid of a lot of stuff that's built up, and it often happens when you start stimulating that vital force of the body. When you remove roadblocks, maybe it's an inflammatory diet, maybe it's some other lifestyle stuff, some chronic stress. When you move that out of the way, your body is like, okay, I am moving forward. I have the resources to heal. I'm going to do it. And a lot of times it will kind of take on this acute sickness to really move things out, and then people feel better on the other side. Not always. Again, why it's good to check in with a local healthcare practitioner. But again, yeah, we have to be aware of what's happening inside. And again, it's much less scary to look inside. Again, if you really truly believe the body is good, the body knows exactly what it's doing. And it's got this innate intelligence and intuitiveness to why it's doing what it's doing. And then instead of being upset and angry about what the body's doing, we get curious. We start asking why. Right? And that's really important, because that keeps that conversation and that train of thought flowing, and we can learn and grow from responses that way. And again, I'm not perfect at any of these. I'm especially not perfect at this one. And, I wasn't raised with naturopathic medicine. I came to that through graduate school. I read the philosophic principles of naturopathic medicine, and I loved it, and it made just incredible intuitive sense to me. But, for a large part of my life, it was a Western medicine mindset. So I very much so still work on this, where occasionally I will still think, oh man, what's happening? This is so silly. I'm frustrated. And I'm like, wait a minute. I just have to reframe, right? And this is what I encourage my patients to do as well. Okay, so myth number 5. I don't have time to be sick, right? I don't want to go on this healing journey. Maybe that's slightly different, but anybody who says I don't have time to be sick is the person that really, really needs to be sick. That's how that one goes. And I hope that makes sense to you in the context of everything else we've talked about here, is that your body has to have this downtime to heal. And sick time is downtime, even though it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes it can be very active and intense, but it is your body putting you in full stop, saying you've been going too much, I need this break, I'm taking it, I'm shutting down everything, and that's where a lot of the symptoms come from, with fever, or foggy headedness, heavy joints, achy joints, whatever it is that's happening, the mucus, the cold. It's very difficult to focus mentally at that point, and your body's taking over and saying, this needs to happen for you to be well. It's not something you can rush. It's not something you can predict. It's entirely individual how this happens, but it is just a different way to look at being sick, and that is actually a really positive thing. Especially from a naturopathic standpoint, we look at the vitality again, right? That natural healing response. That's also another reason why I'm very happy when people get sick, because it tells me their immune system is working. It's not so depleted that it can't get sick. That's the scariest part, right? And that's where we hear about people at the end of life stage, where they end up dying of pneumonia, and it's very scary because they don't have a fever. They show no signs of being sick until they kind of feel like they can't breathe, and then we find out that there's fluid and pus filling up their lungs, right? So that's an example of that immune system just not being strong enough to even mount a response. And that's not what I want to see. I'm excited if people mount a good response, because that's exactly what you need to move through. And again, your immune system's working. So yeah, truth number 5. You have exactly the right amount of time to be sick. As frustrating as that might be, and it's frustrating for me as well when it happens, but then I kind of look at it in this more positive light, right? Your body's going to take as much time as it needs to recover. And again, that's very individual, and it depends on how chronic things have been. This is where sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes people fall off the wagon, and it takes a few months to really rebuild and heal, again, depending on the other stressors and what's been accumulating and happening to them in their life. But rest assured, your body is going to take exactly as much time as it needs to heal. And the beautiful thing about it is, once you remove roadblocks like suppressive medications, chronic stress, inflammatory foods, the body heals really, really quickly. Within a few days, you can feel markedly better. And that should tell you as well that it wants to heal, right? It wants to be in that balanced state. It wants to feel good, just like you do. It's on your side. It's not a separate entity. I know I've talked about it like that because I think it's an easy way to identify. And again, it speaks a different language. It really is just tuning into how you're feeling in your body. And again, our culture really perpetuates not tuning in. Don't listen. If you do, or you take time off, you're weak and there's something wrong with you, and that's just simply not true. We are not machines. We do not run 24/7, and we can't just take a part out and repair it and have it be the same. We are organic, living, breathing things, right? We are a human being, not a human machine, right? There's a totally different set of rules. So it's kind of, again, embracing this vitalistic, intuitive capacity of your body. And it does reap massive rewards if you're able to really start asking your body what it needs and why it's telling you these things. You'll go a really long way in your own healing process. And of course, natural health practitioners can be amazingly helpful that way. But again, our job is really just to remove roadblocks. We don't do any of the healing for you, and I think people have that misconception as well. They feel better, and then they tell me that they feel better like I did it. And I have to kind of tell them that wasn't me. I just reorganized some things there, and your body ran with it. That was all you. And again, that's a very empowering perspective to have. And I think that's one of the most important things to take away from the healing myths, is that, you are in charge, you are empowered, you know exactly what's happening, you are the expert on your body, nobody else is. And that's really how you get through this process, or at least learn the process, and again, it's a skill set that takes time. It can take months, it can take years to really understand. But your knowledge just continues to grow. Again, it's like learning a language, right? The more you practice it, the easier it is. The depth and breadth of your vocabulary gets larger, and it's so rewarding, right? At first, you're just kind of trying to string sentences together, and then maybe you're actually able to say hi to somebody, and it's amazing. And then maybe you can hold a short conversation, and then all of a sudden you're actually, conversing, you're fluent in this language. And each step of that process is massively, massively rewarding. So, okay, well, I hope you really enjoyed this overview this week. I hope it gave you some hope about how you're doing in your own healing journey and what you can do, and the strength you can have when you believe in yourself and that you're worth healing, and that is your body's core desire. It wants to heal just as much as you do. It's just a question of learning to listen to it. Okay, thanks so much. Take care. Turtle, are you helping out? My sweetness. I might just let her sit up here for the video. She's so adorable. It's very difficult to make her move.